You're about to hear 3 chilling accounts that will make you rethink your Valentine's Day plans. What started as innocent romantic evenings spiraled into nightmares that haunt these survivors to this day. One woman's perfect match turned into a relentless stalker, a couple's dinner date led to a terrifying pursuit, and a lonely student's quest for connection unleashed something inhuman. These aren't urban legends or campfire tales. Each story happened exactly as told, with real people whose lives were forever changed by what they experienced on the most romantic day of the year. Some found love that turned obsessive, others encountered strangers with sinister intentions, and one faced something that defied explanation. What makes these stories truly disturbing isn't just what happened, it's how close to home they feel. They began with familiar scenes, dating apps, restaurant reservations, movie nights. But they ended in ways that still keep their survivors awake at night, wondering what might have happened if they'd made different choices. As you read on, remember, these events could happen to anyone looking for love on Valentine's Day. Let me tell you about a stalker who wouldn't take no for an answer, a mysterious couple who weren't what they seemed, and a Valentine's date that revealed a darkness beyond imagination. The stalker. I've been dating Sarah for 3 years now. Everything started innocently enough. I was scrolling through Instagram late one night when her story caught my eye. I left a comment, not expecting much, but we started chatting. The conversation flowed naturally, and within days, we exchanged numbers and added each other on Snapchat. A week later, we met in person. We began hanging out right after the holiday season in January. Valentine's Day was looming on the horizon, and I felt relieved to have met someone interesting. At least I wouldn't have to face that commercially driven holiday alone this year. But as February 14th approached, and Sarah and I had been on several promising dates, she revealed something disturbing. David was the problem. He was a few years older than Sarah, someone she'd met in a group project at her commuter college. What started as casual classroom interaction turned sinister when he began following her around campus. Surprisingly, she never involved campus security or police, even after discovering he'd somehow obtained her address and started sending increasingly unsettling text messages. When I asked why she hadn't blocked his number, she explained she wanted to monitor how far he'd go without getting the hints. The reason for her sudden confession became clear. David had started messaging her again, specifically about Valentine's Day. The texts kept piling up, each one more desperate than the last. Then came the Russell Stover chocolates on her doorstep, followed by his message, "I hope you like the gift I left you." That was when Sarah finally responded, sending him a lengthy message explaining she was seeing someone and needed him to stop. She was terrified he'd gotten her address by following her home. Days later, Sarah forwarded me a screenshot that made my blood run cold. A text from an unknown number asking if she was dating me, using my actual name. Now I felt personally involved, and frankly, scared. All I knew about this guy was that he was persistent enough to harass her for months and potentially stalked her to her house. Now he knew about me. Sarah was close to calling the police. I promised to accompany her to the station if he contacted her one more time. Valentine's Day fell on a Friday that year. We chose a nice waterfront restaurant with outdoor seating, taking advantage of the mild weather. During our meal, we both noticed a man sitting on a bench near the parking lot, his hat pulled suspiciously low over his face. Sarah made a nervous joke about it being David, but when he tilted his head toward us and quickly looked away before leaving, the humor evaporated instantly. Later at my rental house, things were getting romantic on the couch when Sarah suddenly tensed up. "What was that?" she whispered. "I heard it too. Something from the backyard." I offered to check and she nodded nervously. Outside, I expected to find an animal scampering away, but instead discovered my stack of beach chairs knocked over. There wasn't even a breeze that night. That's when I saw him, a tall figure standing in the bushes. My brain took a moment to process what I was seeing. As I stepped forward for a better look, he must have realized he'd been spotted. He burst from the bushes aggressively, but I managed to tackle him while he was still untangling himself from branches. I yelled for Sarah to call the police while struggling to keep him pinned down. When Sarah came outside, she gasped in recognition. It was David, wearing the same shirt as the man from the restaurant. Police arrived and arrested him for trespassing, and Sarah showed them all the harassing messages. She pressed charges for stalking and harassment, resulting in a fine and misdemeanor charge. The court granted her an order of protection. Thankfully, he's been smart enough not to contact her since. The photographers. This happened 4 years ago, but the memory still makes my skin crawl. My boyfriend and I had planned a typical Valentine's Day dinner, nothing extraordinary. As we approached the restaurant, I noticed a couple standing outside, staring at us with unsettling intensity. I gave my boyfriend's arm a slight nudge as we entered, and he gave his name for the waiting list. The host informed us there'd be a 45-minute wait and offered to text us when our table was ready. My boyfriend suggested we kill time at the mini golf course across the street. As we turned to leave, the woman who'd been staring suddenly stood up, extending her hand and introducing herself as Mrs. Bradley. The whole interaction felt wrong. My boyfriend and I exchanged confused glances while her hand hung in the air. Not wanting to appear rude, I eventually shook it. She launched into an enthusiastic speech about how she and her husband were photographers who thought we'd make perfect models. She insisted we follow them to their studio, claiming it was just a 5-minute drive away. When she mentioned not having business cards but offered to drive us there, every red flag imaginable went up. My boyfriend politely declined, saying we had other plans. The woman's smile never wavered, but something about it haunted me as she returned to her silent husband. In the car, I told my boyfriend how creepy the interaction felt, especially how the husband never spoke a word. We tried to laugh it off as we entered the surprisingly empty mini-golf course. You could see the entrance from any point in the small facility, which became relevant when we heard the bell chime during our 5th round. My heart sank as I turned to see Mrs. Bradley and her husband walking in. She scanned the room until our eyes met, and she gave me the most unsettling smile I've ever seen. I alerted my boyfriend, and as they were getting their equipment, I suggested we wait in the car since we'd already been there 15 minutes. As we turned to leave, they were suddenly right behind us, grinning unnaturally wide. "Crazy how we both came to this spot," Mrs. Bradley said. Then her husband finally spoke, suggesting a competition. Bradley versus Rodriguez. My boyfriend froze. Rodriguez was his last name, which we hadn't shared with them. We hurried out, trying not to show our panic. I suggested calling it a night and heading to his place since it was closer than mine and my parents were away until Sunday. He insisted on still having dinner, not letting the strange couple ruin our evening. We spent 15 minutes in his car discussing the bizarre encounter before getting the text that our table was ready. During dinner, my boyfriend insisted on paying since it was Valentine's Day, breaking our usual habit of splitting the bill. While he was in the bathroom, I could have sworn I saw Mrs. Bradley peering around a corner, but I convinced myself it was paranoia. The drive to my boyfriend's house required taking a long, tree-lined road. We noticed a car following us and pulled into a CVS parking lot. We both needed to use the restroom anyway, and when we returned, the suspicious car was gone. Back on that dark road, about 5 minutes in, we heard a loud pop. Both front tires had blown out. My boyfriend's face went pale as he quickly turned off the engine and lights, urging me out of the car. We ran into the woods and hid behind trees and bushes while he called the police. We lay flat on the ground as we heard another car approach. Mrs. Bradley's voice rang out in the darkness. "You took too long." Then we heard a car door slam and tires screeching away. The police arrived within minutes, but they never found the couple or discovered their true identity. 4 years later, we're married with an unsettling story to share with our kids someday. The Valentine's date. During fall semester 2018, I was taking online classes at a prestigious college while planning to transfer to my hometown university for winter term. Even though I knew I'd be leaving, I wanted to make connections, maybe even meet someone special. That's how I met Rachel through Tinder. We clicked immediately and started dating. She was fun at first, though I noticed changes after Thanksgiving break. Her playful sarcasm had developed a mean edge, but I blamed it on finals stress. When winter break came, we stayed in touch through texts, Snapchat, and occasional FaceTime calls. But when classes resumed, we decided to end things. She was struggling being away from home, missing family and friends, with only me and a roommate she barely tolerated for company. As Valentine's Day approached, I found myself feeling lonely. The romantic plans I'd made for Rachel still lingered in my mind. I reactivated my Tinder account 2 days before the holiday, hoping to find someone to spend the evening with since all my friends had plans with their significant others. Most matches wanted to hit the bars, which wasn't my scene. Then I matched with Emma. Shoulder-length blonde hair, cute glasses, freckles, and striking blue eyes. She shared my preference for quiet nights in watching movies. She even had the same major as my friend Rob, and mentioned taking some of his classes, though she wasn't sure if their schedules aligned since the semester had just started. After texting for an hour, we moved to Snapchat and made Valentine's Day plans. Neither of us had Friday classes. Well, Emma said she'd skip her morning class, so we didn't have to end the night early. We got McDonald's, saw a movie, and walked around downtown before heading back to my apartment. Things got intimate, and when she asked to stay over because of the snow, I readily agreed. We fell asleep around 1 a.m. I'm a light sleeper, especially with someone else in bed, so I noticed when Emma got up around 3 a.m. She walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, and shut the door. I dozed off again, but woke at 5:30 a.m. to find her missing. Her clothes were still on the floor, so she hadn't left. Then I heard a creak from across the room. In the darkness, I could make out Emma's figure standing in the corner, facing the wall. I quietly called her name, but she didn't respond. When I turned on the bedside lamp, the weak light revealed her still form. I approached carefully, touching her shoulder and saying her name again. The silence stretched for 10 endless seconds. Suddenly, she whirled around with impossible speed, screaming and hitting me. Her face was completely expressionless as she struck me repeatedly. I fell back onto the bed and she followed, still screaming and attacking. After what felt like forever but was probably only 30 seconds, she ran to her clothes, grabbed them, and fled through the front door. The bathroom door was closed, and a horrible stench leaked out. Inside, I found chaos. The shower curtain torn down, my medicine cabinet emptied, water everywhere. Worst of all, she had defecated and smeared it on the mirror. I called the police immediately, but they could do little. Her Tinder and Snapchat profiles had vanished, and the only photo I had showed her using a filter. Rob came over to stay the night, just in case. When I showed him the photo, he confirmed he'd never seen her in any of his classes. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of someone trying my front door handle. After a minute, it stopped. When I checked the peephole, no one was there. Nothing has happened since, but sometimes when I can't sleep at night, I still think about Emma standing motionless in that corner and what might have really been in my apartment that Valentine's Day. A final warning, these 3 stories serve as dark reminders that love's special day can hide unexpected dangers. Whether it's an obsessed admirer who won't take no for an answer, mysterious strangers with hidden agendas, or something more supernatural lurking in the shadows. Valentine's Day isn't always about hearts and roses. If these stories resonated with you, or if you have your own Valentine's Day horror story to share, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment below. Your experience might help someone else stay safe. Hit like if you want more true horror stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear these warnings before their next Valentine's Day date. Remember, trust your instincts. That uneasy feeling in your gut might just save your life. Sometimes the real horror isn't in what we can see, but in what we choose to ignore. Stay safe out there. Love can be beautiful, but it can also be deadly.